So yeah, welcome everybody at the Aerial Robotics Community Working Group. It's today's March 13th, 2024 on a Wednesday, and today's a developer meeting. So we'll be going through some of the subcommittees that have been formed and what their development goals are today. So this is the agenda for today. So first we're going to start with some announcements. Also then we're going to introduce some new subcommittees. And then like the leads can introduce themselves and just tell why they've chosen this subcommittee to lead. Then we're going to look at kind of like the work done in current state by subcommittees, giving that perhaps the new ones that don't have that many things to show yet for, but that's okay. Then also kind of like the immediate plans for the sub-projects and important PRs. Then we have some time at the end for some discussion points, which means that's going to be about the new subcommittees for indoor navigation and simulation. We'll have some time for a nice startup discussion. And then we're going to conclude and just announce the next meeting. So it should all take up about an hour. So yeah, announcements. We have two subcommittees, as I said before. So indoor navigation, simulation, indoor navigation, the facilitator is Mayank. And for simulation, Arsh and Ruus are going to be the co-lead facilitators for that. So we'll have some space for that for them to introduce themselves. And we have a topic discussion on ROS discourse that was started by Mayank about development topics for aerial robotics. So if you haven't looked at those yet, please do and add your thoughts if you have opinions. Also, I would like to note that Ryan started a discussion about 2 weeks ago about Rep 147, which was based on a discussion meeting that we had 2 weeks ago about Rep 147. Perhaps there hasn't been many replies on that yet, so perhaps it would be good to take a look. Yeah, so let's start with the introductions. So first, indoor navigation. Yeah, navigation indoors pretty much speaks for itself. So I would like to perhaps would like to ask Mayank to maybe kind of introduce himself very quickly and why he's so interested in indoor navigation.
Hey, I'm Mayank. I'm a model lead for Edge applications at Viman AI, where we work on camera tech for ROS-based camera technology for warehouse inventory management. And although we've moved on past using drones inside the warehouse, I still find that there's a lot of utility in using drones for several other use cases, wherein indoor may not specifically refer to just maybe inside a building, but could be just GPS denied environments, whether it's underground or let's say there's bad RF. So I feel a lot of the work that can happen for GPS denied environments can be very useful for several use cases where aerial robots can provide value. Yeah, so in terms of the problem of indoor navigation, I feel there is this inherent mess in the ROS aerial kind of space wherein there are some packages, some navigation stacks, but none of them were either written for 3D or for aerial use case, or they exist but are either outdated or not really up to date in terms of the having a ROS layer associated with them. So a lot of research is also very fragmented in this space. And another layer of complexity in indoor is that you can have very differing hardware platforms and capabilities based on weight classes. Because for outdoor, if you're flying something outside, you need it to be at least as heavy to be able to resist wind or have a GPS sensor. But indoors, there is probably a lot more variety you could have depending on the use case, from a crazy fly all the way to like a heavy platform carrying like an NVIDIA Xavier platform or something like that. So simulation work also is primarily for AGVs. Things like the NVIDIA Isaac ROS stack or existing navigation stacks like ROS2, NAV2 are also typically built for AGVs. So there is a gap wherein we can work on a lot of cool projects to see how well these parts assemble for indoor navigation. and get some cool pipelines or template set of packages which show like a proof of concept based on ROS2 using the latest algorithms in VIO, SLAM, and things like that, which I find really exciting.
All right, thanks a lot, Mayank. I would say for everybody else, if you have any questions, let's save them for write them down, and let's save them for the discussion after the the discussion meeting, after the main part of the discussion. Awesome. Let's continue to simulation, which is co-led by Ries and Arsh. Ries, can you first introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Kim. Hi, Reese Mannering. So I'm one of the developers for ArduPilot. I mainly help out there with, or have been, with kind of the gazebo integration. And so I'm kind of quite happy to be involved with the simulation side of the ROS aerial vehicles. I'm mainly coming from the gazebo angle, but quite happy to help out with other things. There's a variety of simulators that gets used by our ArduPilot, and one of the things that we're looking to do with gazebo is we've got the ROS integration with the various bridges that has, so it's quite a good platform for doing that. It has like various weaknesses. It's not the strongest flight simulator, and that could be improved, but mainly we've been using gazebo to fill the gap where you've got multi-vehicle simulation or simulation between things like ground vehicles or surface vehicles and aerial vehicles. So or we are kind of adding things on. So you sort of just recently been asked to have a look at the effect of adding a tether with a weight which is of a similar mass to the drone, because that introduces all sorts of oscillations. So for those types of problems, it's really good. But we haven't really spent a lot of time enhancing I guess the flight dynamics of the of the gazebo simulation, and so we really kind of do things that are kind of needed to cover gaps where other simulators are not perhaps serving as well. So real flight, I think, is used by the ArduPilot team a lot for the more kind of accurate modeling of aerodynamics. I'm not so familiar with that, but it tends not to be so good if you want to interact with other types of vehicles or have multi-vehicle simulations. So quite happy for people to make suggestions about things. I'm not familiar with all the simulators that are sort of covered in Kimberly's document, but if people are interested to make suggestions and add things, then we can kind of at least try and coordinate the work on it. For the other project I'm involved with Ryan and Jay, where we're looking at doing terrain navigation, gazebo again is quite good for that. We're looking at getting digital elevation maps into the simulation, and again, it's a platform that gets used with both PX4 and ROS and ArduPilot and ROS. So it's quite a good environment for that. So that'll mainly be my angle, but open to like suggestions from other simulators, and if people have particular requirements to improve the flight dynamics, that would be very good to get in there or make the modeling easier to use. Yeah, okay, that's for me. And Ash will have his own contributions. So over to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go for it, Arsh. And thanks, Ries. We'll discuss all of these later. I'm writing some discussion topics down. Nice. Arsh, if you could introduce yourself as well, and yeah, also your experience with
Hi.
simulators.
So I work at LDS's laboratory. So we mostly work on the control side. Recently, we have established a new flight arena for testing the applications, and my life has been quite difficult since then because we have to simulate ground vehicle plus the drones and other multiple types of drones along with the ground vehicle, and it's been difficult to choose simulation tools for the drones specifically, and I have been struggling with it since like almost 3 years. And so I thought maybe why not to contribute to the community, and let's streamline the things so other people can be like it can be easier for the entry point for other people. And yeah, most of the part is talked about, and plus this multi-vehicle simulation thing with different type of vehicles.
All right. Yes. Thanks a lot. Okay, so also for anybody that's not a lead right here, like if you go to the GitHub repository of ROS Aerial and community, there's now sub-project pages, let's say, in the sub-project folder, which there's a landing page per subcommittee, sub-project, or whoever you'd like to call it. And then you can kind of add yourself on the bottom if you would like to be a member and actually actively contribute to it. Yeah, so that's just for you guys to know. So let's go to the next phase, is namely work done in current state of the subcommittees. So it would be a good opportunity for me to show you how the projects Kanban boards look like. So let me just get that up right here in different tab. There we go. I hope everybody is able to see it. Yes, there you go. That always takes a little bit of a while. So yeah, so this is the GitHub organization for the ROS Aerial Community Working Group for ROS. And these landing pages that I just told you about you're able to find it on the sub-projects in the community repository right here. So here you have all of these. We have 4 at the moment. And so let's start with, for instance, like, let's start with indoor navigation. And here's the landing page. And then there's also the GitHub project that we can look at, so we can see what has been done so far. It's quite empty, but that is completely normal. There has been some doc updated. I've added this myself, but it was just like a very tiny fix. So yeah, I guess, Mayank, we still have to add issues, right? Or PRs.
Yeah, I think what would be interesting is maybe if we figure out the governance for subcommittee meetings, we can maybe prioritize on the summary from what we saw in the discussion on Discord. And start to take up maybe interesting projects based on like him. Yeah, sorry. I was saying that I had noted down a couple of conclusions on what I saw on Discord site, and maybe we can have a subcommittee meeting to discuss which one we want to take up first and who's interested in what, and then accordingly see things. So like, for instance, what I would see is one angle we can take is feasibility studies on existing autonomy stacks like Aerostack 2 for indoor navigation to see how well they support that in their current form and identify gaps which we can start working on. Another is VIO seems to be like an interesting problem to solve for ROS2, but maybe we can have parallel approaches between nano-sized words like Crazyfly, where we can do optical flow and maybe some limited sensor stuff, and micro class drones, wherein you can have assume an IMU and an image sensor for like a depth camera and also address typical VIO algorithms there and try out implementations. And the third angle is SLAM, of course, wherein we know that OBSLAM exists, NanoSLAM for Crazyfly exists. We can just try it out, see how well it's supported for ROS2, how well does it work in simulation. So I was thinking along these 3 axes, and then depending on where we feel we can start, maybe to get a feel for this overall thing, we can start building up capabilities in indoor navigation with ROS2.
All right, very good. Those are good discussion points for what we can look at in a minute. So, Banana, yeah, go ahead if you have a question. And
I can go.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Is it in the plan that we will do an onboard program? The processing itself of the SLAM and the NanoSLAM will be on board, or will it be kind of sending the data to a central computer and then processing it and then getting it back?
I think these are implementation details which will come around to specifics once we plan. It's first about what is the overall problem we want to pick up. And then once
Yeah,
we come to the technical design, we can see for which weight class what is possible. Because, for example, for Crazyfly, you can have an offboard node which does heavy compute on like a connected base station. Whereas for others, I'm guessing like if you have the onboard compute, how much can you do inside a microcontroller versus something like a Raspberry Pi versus something like a Jetson Xavier? Those are three very different questions. So we can think about how we want to structure approaches accordingly. But I think that's a later question. The first question is, what problem do you want to start with?
Yeah, that is indeed a good point. Write it down. Let's save for discussion later.
yeah, pardon me.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. There was more of like if there was any question about the Kanban board so far, but yeah, it's still empty. Let's move on to the landing page for simulation. There you go. So there's still PR open for that. But this is also kind of the landing page. There's some extra repositories coming up. And this is the Kanban board of the current. Yeah, so there's mostly documentation posted in here. So it's there's something happening. But perhaps resource could maybe give some thoughts of things that's like some of the topics that we can discuss later.
Yeah, sure. So for Gazebo anyway, there's like a heap of things that would make it easier to use. So setting up a new model in Gazebo requires quite a lot of tuning of the controllers and things like that. So and so you've got the controllers for say the actual PID loops of the flight control system, but you've also got like the controllers for the actuators. And so every time you create a new model with different mass and different sort of size props and things like that, you've got to go through and tune all the position and velocity controllers. So things like that are quite hard to set up. So little tools that would make that easier to use would be good. So terrain modeling is something that's kind of not that easy to set up in Gazebo at the moment. And I think that's probably quite a big thing for the sort of things that we're trying to do. And then maybe just there's quite a lot of environments that we've provided for ArduPilot anyway, for doing different scenarios. So Ash was mentioning kind of landing on moving vehicles, landing on ships. People want to land quadcopters on ships that are moving quite violently and things like that, because they seem to be problems that people are looking at solving more. And we have some environments for those, but they're not that easy to use, and probably most people wouldn't realize they're out there without really digging into some of the kind of issues or Discord pages that that discuss them. So probably bringing those to the open would be something that would be worth doing. And then I expect what will happen is that once people start looking at them, we'll get feedback for improvements and build up on there. So I guess we make it project based. So where people have projects that they need features, we address those, as opposed to going out and saying, right, we're going to build a fancy simulation for this or that or the other thing. So from my perspective anyway, it's most useful to be driven by new features that are required for projects that are in flight. And I'll probably be adding items around that. But I think the main thing is that if people have requirements, is to get them in there so we can at least start to see where to focus the work. I say it's fairly blank sheet at the moment.
All right, perfect. Well, and that's absolutely fine because we just started. So, Ars, do you have anything to add to that? Any difficulties that, like you said, it's not so straightforward for to work with simulation at the moment?
Yeah, so the thing is, like, there exists a lot of different simulators. So some simulator has some specific feature, some doesn't have, some are missing some feature. So it really depends on the requirements. But like, I mostly work with Gazebo VBoats and sometimes Coppelia Sim. But and I recently encountered several new simulation tools from previous meetings and notes from previous meetings. So I'm just making the list of everything and putting it on the landscape page. So it will be there soon. So you can add a couple of things more if you think there is something missing, or if you want to add some new simulator tool. You can either open issue or maybe open PI by also yourself, and yep.
All right, we can take a quick look at the PR that's currently open. Oh no, wait, that's not an that's more of an issue. The simulators, yeah, the feature comparison table that's now currently yeah, that is awesome. I've added a review, by the way, so you can take a look at that. All right, let's then go back again to let's look at the Kanban board of a sub-project that has been going on for a little bit longer. So it's going to be a little bit more busier, namely outdoor navigation. I currently think that only Reese, you're the only one that's that is from the subcommittee that's here. Could you maybe give like a current status of how it's going with the outdoor gang?
Sure. Actually, a lot of the stuff that I think this is a lot of the stuff we're doing at the moment. Well, I've been doing is probably more on the ArduPilot side, where we're looking at the integration to be able to use the terrain planner. So it's and I don't think that shows up in this particular board. We've got another board which covers the sort of the ROS integration with ArduPilot, where there's quite a bit going on there. So I think where it is, there's an initial ROS2 port of Jay's work that's up and running. So I think we've got it running on both Macs and Ubuntu, so that's pretty nice. There's lots of things to fix up, but it's kind of a working environment. Integration with PX4 and ROS2 is working, so that's good. And then on the ArduPilot side, we've got not everything is checked into the master yet, but there's PRs which cover straight integration with DDS. So one of the things that we've been looking to do in ArduPilot is remove the whole MavROS layer. Which we now have a version up and running, and that's quite interesting because it does feed back into the Rep 147 requirements, and so you can start seeing where some of the messages that you need to make things work are not covered in the current set. So we're providing experimental versions of them, and I think the main difference between perhaps the way PX4's approached the integration and ArduPilot is that in PX4, the ROS2 layer into PX4 exposes the internal messages of PX4, the orbs, and then there's another tool which bridges those into general ROS messages. In ArduPilot, what we're aiming to do is to handle the ROS messages directly in ArduPilot, so there's no intermediate layer. Now that's working for quite a few of the messages. It turns out to be some issues between getting the geoid versus the ellipsoid reference for things like navsat messages, so we're going to have to deal with that. But by and large, it's working quite well, and we've added a path guidance controller into Plane to be able to use that. So it's coming along, and I think once the kind of open PRs and ArduPilot are closed, we'll have both PX4 and ArduPilot will both integrate with this terrain stack, which is quite nice. And then the next stage, I think, is really about making it much easier to use. So it's quite difficult to use as a general user at the moment, because if you just want to go to your flying field, load up a dual elevation map for your particular area and set it up and basically plan a route, that's quite involved. You have to pre-calculate the terrain maps, you have to kind of get it all sorted out. Ideally, you want to be able to do that from some kind of ground control station. So as we sort of move from getting it to work end to end to actually understanding how to make it into a tool that users would be able to use, we're going to have additional requirements come on. So I think the focus will start to switch from does it work at all which is yes, to if we have a bunch of users who ask us how do we get this running on their plane, what do they need to do, and that's the next stage of the problem. So that's not all down in here, so we should probably start getting that added. But as we're shifting into that stage, we're sort of figuring out what the next steps are. But that's where I see they'll be. It'll be, how do you turn it from like a research tool that kind of someone fully familiar with all the various components can get working, to how can someone who's got a plane and a ground control station and has got a reasonable idea of how to set parameters up but isn't a developer, how do we make it possible for them to set this thing up on a companion computer and actually get it to work? And I think that's quite hard to do that well, but that'll be, I think, where the direction will need to go.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, you know how to add external items to this Kanban board, right?
No, but I'm about to learn, I think. So
it's yeah, it's quite easy. I'm not going to show it here, but
okay.
if you just do like add item,
yeah,
you just literally copy paste.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Just the repo and the link, and it all pulls it in. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You just have to
right.
You have to have the full link in there if you want to do like an external one. So it was actually easier than I expected. I had to look for it.
I think we can do that. Yeah.
Okay,
so we could cross-link the ones that are relevant. So they'll be.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be any like all the small things, but at least like the big ones, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's quite useful to have it there, because you get visibility on. So it might look like it's a bit static at the moment, but there's actually quite a lot going in some other areas. So it might be good to get the.
Yeah, that's true. But there have been lots completed, so it's like I wouldn't call it still.
It's moving along. Yeah. So
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Awesome. Great. There was one.
You can also add it from the issue itself. So when you create an issue, there's a menu for projects on the right-hand side. So it's under the labels. Then you can just select. You can just select the project. That's the easiest way. Yeah.
So like
there,
like this, yeah.
Project. Then it will go into the Kanban.
Yeah. This, however, would only work if there's a project within the organization. If you want to add like a PR or an issue from a organization that's not part of ROS Aerial, then you would need to add that like I showed before in the GitHub repository. But these are for instance like internal within organization issues indeed. But thanks for noting that. Yeah, we're like I think it would be good to kind of start moving along for like the simulation or an indoor navigation discussion, especially if we want to leave some time, because there's only half an hour left. So I will very quickly go through the sub projects for documentation. It's not the most exciting progress. It's just like it's documentation, but it's very important. You guys are all reading it, so there have been mostly like small additions to the simulator. We now also have a very small page about message standards. Currently not very very large. It just references to Rep 147 and kind of like explains about ROS, but it can be added. And there's have been a lot of additions to simulators, as Ars and Reese has just mentioned. So yeah, but it's nice because we actually have now some additions that has been still for quite some time. So it's nice to actually see some contributions that are not only only for one person. So okay, let me just go back to the presentation. So work done, current state of subcommittees, next plans, PRs. I guess that's all part of the same thing anyway, if you look at the GitHub projects. Yeah, so let's perhaps start with the indoor navigation discussion. So Mayank, you have probably a couple of topics, or
yeah. So I was thinking one could be a feasibility study on existing packages for indoor aerial navigation, like Aerostag 2 and others. This could be either packages which are stale like I think somebody mentioned robotics or something else, and seeing if we can port those to ROS2 and if they're still relevant today, or if there are, let's say, navigation stacks for or autonomy stacks like Aerostack 2, how well are they working for indoor case? Or another approach could be looking into things like nav2 or AGV based stacks, and whether we can, what is the perceived effort of adding support for 2.5D or 3D navigation, because quite often there are these camera based or GPS denied environment navigation solutions just for ground vehicles. So that was one angle of looking into existing packages. Another one I was thinking was defining which I think might be a foundation level thing we need to do, is define um, tracks of like hardware weight classes or platforms for the kind of research or projects that we're going to build, because the capabilities which are there on a crazy fly kind of platform differ greatly from what we can assume on um, like a micro quad with a depth camera and heavier processing. So um, and the third was trying out SLAM algorithms in simulation, like ROS2 or SLAM. I think somebody wrote a wrapper recently using depth cameras, and ETH had NanoSlam, which came out for Crazy Fly. So if we can see that, see how well is ROS2 supported and port that. So these are like a couple of ideas we could look into um, and start along those axes. But of course, I just want to maybe preface this by saying that my understanding of like what it takes to build like an indoor nav stack is where we have like some inputs like a map, maybe a behavior tree, sensor data, waypoints, all of that. And then we have like co-processing, like a local planner, obstacle avoidance, global planner and recovery. And just like what we have for ground vehicles with the base controller, you output velocity. And the motivation of probably the overall group here would be to sort of figure out how to build these components, but for aerial autonomy, and provide a reference pipeline for maybe a certain specific set of constraints or an operational envelope.
All right. We have a lot of topics. It's probably we're not going to finish this all in 15 minutes, and there's a lot of already 5 minutes of
Sure.
So, but this is definitely very good input that you guys can also use if you organize like an inner subcommittee meeting or something like that. Is there anybody that would like to comment on this?
I'm happy to help with the start. I think it was the study of the existing packages, the feasibility study. So yeah, if you can just give more information about what's needed there, I'm happy to help with that.
Sure. I think if you go through the discourse thread which was linked, people just like dropped a lot of existing packages which they saw, which looked exciting. And I think if you go through the current aerial robotic landscape, across different pages, you'll find packages that people have mentioned, and we can see the state of those and maybe have a basic feature comparison table. Hey, does it support ROS2 or ROS1? Is it under active development or not? How well is it tested for aerial vehicles and which one? Like kind of defining those axes to better understand qualitatively like a comparison of existing packages, that will be great.
Okay, and do we care if it's simulation only?
No, I don't think so. It's just that maybe given hardware constraints or the availability of a flying space, some of these might be easier to test out in sim for active development, at least in the initial phases. And also for a safety concern, if you're trying out something new, it might make more sense to think about simulation support from the start itself, instead of as like a good to have afterwards. I think especially if you're starting fresh, it'll be great if we can spend some extra effort to figure out how to do development for that in Gazebo or some simulation. It might run slow, it might have some limitations, but I feel specifically for indoor navigation, simulation is going to play a key role.
I've just added the landing page for the indoor navigation for you, Bernardo. So you can see also the Discord threads that the people communicate in quite a bit. And also, of course, like, just information about the sub-project itself.
Okay, great.
Yes. Yeah, anybody else have any questions to Mayank or any comments on the...
Will we have in this community or committee? Will we have a weekly meeting, or how will it go in the operational level, or something like that? How will it go?
I think first,
or
first, I think what will be helpful, Manora and others, is whoever's interested in this topic, if you could quickly raise a PR to the community page itself, so we get an idea of who all are interested developers in this group to work on indoor navigation. That's the first step, to identify who are potentially interested in this topic as of now. You don't have
I think we lost Mayank.
then we can offline for us. Hello?
can you repeat maybe
Hello?
the last 30 or 15 seconds?
Sure. Yeah, I was saying, let's start by everybody raising a PR to add themselves to the list of members. And then we can plan out like a common time slot to have a committee meeting so that we can see who's interested in what and what looks feasible and how do we plan out a project. And maybe initially it'll be helpful if either Kimberly or Ramon or both could help out with maybe the first 1 or 2 subcommittee meetings. And after that, we could maybe just, give broader updates.
Yeah, I think for me, I have added my name to the members in this README file. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kim. Yep. Then we see about that maybe after that. Yeah. I'm looking forward to hearing from you, Miyank. Yep.
Sorry about my network.
No
guys,
problem.
but
No problem.
yeah.
No problem.
I think the point got across. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, Khaled, you're added as as a member to the indoor navigation already. So great. That's all good. All right. Anybody else? A few more minutes until we switch to simulation. All right. Then I think it's all up for the next meeting then. Once people add themselves to the landing page for indoor navigation, of course. So let's move now to simulation. So perhaps Ash, maybe you would like to start with some of the discussion topics that you would like to put on here.
Yeah, so I was just about to post on Discord for the simulation topic, similar to the indoor nav that Mayank has done. I was just hoping to other to contribute on that discussion, like maybe we can conclude which simulation tool to use at the end, probably, because I have like list of 15 tools, simulation tools. And every tool has their own specialty, and some has support for ROS2, some doesn't. So yeah, that was the first point that I wanted to clear out. And after that, after we decide on the simulator, we have some simulation packages that are maybe there on the simulator. So we can also try that. And we also have new Discord for the simulation subcommittee. I will also post the link on the same post for the on the Discord. So discourse and Discord. Okay. Yeah, it's confusing.
Yes.
I will post it on this course or for the link of Discord. So that was the initial point that I wanted to follow. Maybe Riz has something to add.
Sure, Ash. I think from my point of view, there'll be quite a lot of the requirements for simulation are probably going to be driven by the other streams. So Mayank mentioned that for indoor navigation, you're going to need a simulation environment for a certain type of problem. So maybe like Visual SLAM or something like that. So what I'm hoping will come out of the other streams is saying like, we would like an environment to simulate a ground vehicle, an aerial vehicle in a room or a building with these features. And so that then starts to kind of set the scope of what the simulation has to provide. And then we can say, well, of the simulation environments we've got, these are your ones that might be an option. And then we can narrow it down and say, okay, maybe we need to work on Gazebo or maybe AirSim if someone still wants to develop that for the visual stuff, or one of the other ones. And we'll kind of steer the project work in the simulation stream by what problems people want to solve. And so, because it is, as Ash mentions, it's a huge field. There's so many different simulators out there. There's no possible way that we can get familiar with all of them and be able to support all of them. But for particular problems, it's probably going to narrow down to a much smaller choice. And then we can kind of weigh in about which one has the most support for ROS and maybe the flight stack that we're using. And then that'll guide us to what we need to do. And then someone said, look, can we provide a tool for that? So I'm hoping that the other streams will provide a lot of the input for what we need here. That's happening on the outdoor navigation side, and it's also happening on some of the flight stack work as well. And we'll take it from there. But I'm kind of happy to take any steer. But that's a way I can see that we can narrow down the problems a little bit more from what is really a quite a huge field. And so we'll see what comes back from people's requirements, and we'll try and run the simulation stream a little bit like that. And I know Ash has got problems that he's sort of looking to try and solve. So hopefully, if we have 3 or 4 different projects in there that people are trying to solve, and each of them has got a simulation requirement, we can use that to start moving things along.
Yeah, I guess it is like one of those type of topics or simulation, like it can be it can be something very specific, or it can be everything. Since it's a very common tool that's kind of used all along the chain. So yeah, that might be a bit of a challenging feat indeed.
It is, yeah. And so you kind of need an angle into it, and so that starts with a project that someone's trying to solve. And so and it could be that someone wants, we need better aerial fidelity for this particular type of problem we're trying to solve, and that's a very specific one. Or I know that it may not be so relevant to some of the work here, but in ArduPilot, there are people who want to build like new controllers, and so they want to sort of test the controllers, and they're looking at kind of putting chirp functions through the controllers to get the outputs for that, to build up kind of like quite high fidelity models for certain types of flight characteristics they want to model. That's again a completely different thing. So I think because this is ROS, it tends to be more about integrating lots of different pieces together. That's kind of the nature of the ROS ecosystem. So the simulators that we're using tend to reflect an ability to do that. But it's not necessarily so that Gazebo is the case, which is quite good at doing that. There are other ones that also do that. It just depends on the problem. So we can fill out a little bit more, I think, to start with what we're already doing for the outdoor navigation stack. And so that's something that we're kind of missing. So there's definitely work going on, simulation work going on, that we haven't documented there. So we should add that, and that may help some of the other streams with sort of filling in their requirements as well.
let's see. We have a couple of questions. I think Bonolo, you had your question first. Would you like to say it, or shall I say it?
Yes, I just wanted to know whether the creation of digital twins will be part of the scope of the simulation subcommittee.
I guess yes, if that's a requirement. Again, I think it's driven by what problems people want to solve. I think that's quite a hard problem, but if that's something that that there was a requirement from the community to develop that, then we should get it included. I don't know how
Great.
easy it will be to solve, but you know, if we can, we can certainly take a shot at it.
Let's see. Mayank, you had a question too?
Yeah, I think I vaguely remember seeing this in the simulation ICRA or IROS discussion which happened, but it might be good to have as a starting point some metrics that we define or some axes along which we recommend simulators, like photorealism being one, aerodynamics being one, and just have like a kind of summary table on the aerial robotic landscape page for simulation itself, which might be very useful for the other subcommittees to figure out which one they want to focus on. So the simulation subcommittee might be the best to figure out what those metrics are or what those columns of the table should look like. But I think having like a comparison of sorts beyond just a one-liner, especially for simulators that people have prior experience with, could be invaluable.
Yes,
Sure. Yep.
yeah, that's true. There is some work going on that side as well, which should be on the page soon.
All right. There's a question by Khalid. Go for it. Or was that not a question?
I think he put something on comment, maybe software in loop and hardware in loop thing.
Ah, yes. Okay, yeah, I see it indeed. Yeah, go for it. Sure, Reese.
Yeah, we are considering these aspects as well in the comparison. Sometimes we find it is supported. Sometimes we don't know if is it really supported or not. So we just put it as unknown. So whenever we find the data, we are trying to put it under the table, and it will be available on the Git repo, the entire table of the comparison soon. So yeah.
I guess what I have
Thank
maybe
you.
a question about that. Oh, sorry, Khalid, go for it. Yeah, you can
No,
finish
no,
your.
actually, I was asking the question while I was muted. So thank you for reading the chat, and thank you. I was thanking you for your comment, Arish. So yeah, pardon me.
No worries.
Yeah, merci.
Anyway, what I would want to add perhaps is that, of course, like I said, this being a ROS committee, ROS working group, I guess there's a different approach. What you could do is, like, for instance, you could have a software in the loop or hardware in the loop node in ROS that communicates with the simulator through the ROS framework. But I see also, I think PX4 does it that, for instance, like the software in the loop actually communicates directly with simulation. That kind of, or maybe like, performance reasons. So that's kind of like also kind of like an approach of what to think of if you want to have that in the ROS ecosystem and all.
Yes, yes. But one of the tricks is that you will need some sort of emulator that emulates for you your hardware, and then will it be connecting with the simulation or not? That's another topic. So what you're saying is extremely true, but you have still the performance aspect, which affects the actual performance in real life and how it works. But yeah, what you're saying is extremely true, and that's how yeah, that's how it is being done through kind of the previous times.
All right. Is there anybody else who would like to add anything 2, like any other discussion topics, of course, we're going to have a discourse topic about this soon. But is there anybody else who would like to share something? Not everybody wants. Perhaps this is good as good as it gets. Like I said before, we have multiple channels where we can continue the discussion for. I also added a landing page for simulation in the chat. So if you would like to add yourself as a member there and to like also be involved in the let's say some development goals or setting development goals for simulation, then go ahead and make a pull request for that. Yeah, cool. Okay, I think it's then time to round things up. If there's nobody else that would like to add anything more to this. Yeah, which is already like the next meeting announcement. So next meeting that's going to be in 2 weeks time. It's going to be a presentation meeting, and it's going to be held by Reese, and he's going to talk about gazebo and UAVs. That's the idea. So same time, same meeting link, as long as we're not being harassed by any more bots this time. Yeah, so that's 27th of no, not 27th of February. Let me just change that. That is very much in the past. It's the 27th of March, obviously. So the GitHub organization again is github.com ROS-Aerial that you can add. See the aerial landscape that term has come up in this meeting a couple of times. You can add yourself as a member to either the main working group or any of the sub projects. And if of course you would like to give a presentation about your specific project, we have like plenty of slots before the summer, so go for it. Yeah, and send me Kimberly at bitcase.io or Ramon or Roach at linuxfoundation.com if you would like to give a presentation about your particular project. Yeah, and that's it. Would like to thank everybody for coming, and yeah, we're finishing this meeting early. That
Thank
has
you.
never happened before.
Merci, merci. Thank you.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, Kim. Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
guys. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.